Whoever you are, from wherever you come, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, however you define family, you are welcome. The identities that you hold, how you want to be called, and your pronouns are respected and welcomed here. Whatever the color of your skin, the language your grandparents spoke, the cultures that move in your being, the abilities and disabilities you hold, we welcome you. Whether you are here in person, joining us from the comfort of your home, or zooming in from wherever your life journey has taken you, we welcome you. We join together in Unitarian Universalist principles. We are a community of communities, spiritual seekers acting out our faith in justice, united in covenant and the spirit of love. We welcome all of you. Good morning. My name is Eddie Daniel, and my pronouns are he and him. As a member of the worship ministry team, it is my privilege to be leading this service today. I am delighted to see all of you here in person, and hello to all of you watching from home. If you are new to us, to UU Church West, I would like to give you a special welcome. Checking out a new spiritual community can be a courageous act. Even when we are doing church virtually, we would love to connect with you. If you send an email message to visitor@uucw.org, we will be in touch. We have a special lay-led service today, and I'd like to introduce the team of people who have contributed to it. They are members of the UUCW Antiracism Transformation team and allied partners. If you didn't know we had an anti-racism transformation team, or what they have been doing for us, that's about to change. The members of the team and partner organizations who are joining with me today are Helen Ambule, Eric Hoagland, Jean Jarecki, Greg Conert, Tom Moore, and Beth Radican, and along with Ann Heidkamp, who is the former Social Action Committee chair. Now I want to draw your attention to a few announcements. If you have a joy or concern, you may take advantage of the QR code in the order of service and share using your phone. Or if you're old school like me, you can still write them on the green sheet in your order of service and give it to an usher. You can also email Reverend Denise directly. As a member of MICAH, UUCW has two people on its board. Stephanie Richardson is stepping down from the board after faithful service for 6 years. Thank you, Stephanie, for your years of service and dedication. If you might be interested in joining the board, the MICAH board, please see board member Joyce Cable in the community room after the service. MICAH is also having a gala in May. The theme is Celebrating MICAH with Justice and Joy. It will be held on Thursday, May 19th at 6 p.m. in the H.L. Palmer Lodge in Wauwatosa. Keynote speaker is Jeff Roman, Chief Equity Officer, MKE County Office on African American Affairs. To purchase tickets, see the link in your announcements. The SOPHIA Pledge Breakfast and Auction is being held on Saturday, May 21st at 9 a.m. in Waukesha. The keynote speaker is Wisconsin Poet Laureate Dasha Kelly Hamilton, and as a personal note, she is amazing. For details and to purchase tickets, see the link listed in your announcements. Speaking of MICAH and SOPHIA, these are just two of the organizations associated with the Antiracism Transformation team that you will hear about today. After the service, you can learn more about all of them in the community room. And finally, our ROC 19 task force has once again revised our COVID protocols. Unfortunately, we will not be singing together in the service today. Ruben will play the hymns for us. And sadly, there will be no coffee after the service, although you may talk to each other as usual in the community room with your masks on, of course. This ends the morning announcements.
We'll begin this morning with a hymn called We Would Be One, with music by Sibelius and words by Unitarian Universalist Samuel Anthony Wright. Although we can't sing as a group, this is a familiar tune, and you are welcome to hum behind your masks with me. We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what in us is true. We would be one in living for each other, to show to all a new community. We would be one in building for tomorrow a nobler world than we have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and points us on our way. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service. With love and justice strive to make all free.
Good morning. My name is Greg Conert, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. As a member of the Board of Trustees and also the Antiracism Transformation team, I welcome you to this service developed by dedicated members of our team. Two additional members that weren't mentioned earlier are Karen Zimmerman and Stephanie Richardson. Change is inevitable. As we all know, life brings us positive changes that thrill us and give us satisfaction and even joy. But it also brings us negative changes that discourage and depress us. In an ever-imperfect world, we are constantly striving to either accept or change things that do not align with our values, principles, or ambitions. Change is constantly happening all around us. Do you remember a time when it was great to be awakened? It was like being enlightened, and it was a positive, glorious thing. Now, when some people accuse you of being woke, they mean it in vile, contemptible terms. This room where we sit is filled with woke people. Let me share the woke statement by Raven Crass from Soul Circles. Wokeness is an encouragement for people to wake up and question dogmatic social norms. It requires an active process of deprogramming social conditionings, focusing on consistent efforts to challenge the universal infractions we are all subjected to. In order for one to stay woke, one must first be woke. Those who are woke must engage themselves in ways that actively challenge the world we live in. Transformation, a theme of our service today and a focus of our anti-racism work, is defined as a process of changing completely. It's big, it can be scary, and it can be uncomfortable. In our context, it is spiritual work and it requires spiritual courage. Living our UU values helps guide us to cope with change and empowers us to join together in this transformational effort to be woke ourselves and to help woke up others. Again, welcome and thank you for your participation today.
We light our chalice today using the words of the proposed 8th principle that was passed by the congregation on October 25th, 2020. Please join with me. The words are printed in your order of service. For those of you who are joining us at home, feel free to light your chalice or candle. We, the members of Unitarian Universalist Church West, covenant to affirm and promote, journeying toward spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions.
Good morning. I'm Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education, and my pronouns are he and him. We welcome you to Unitarian Universalist Church West, located in Brookfield, Wisconsin, on land formerly inhabited by the native peoples of the 7 Council Fires, Ho-Chunk, Kickapoo, Potawatomi, Menominee, Peoria, and Miami nations. Of these, only the Forest County Potawatomi community currently has rights to less than 7 acres of trust land in the vicinity. Our middle school youth group composed this statement last fall after learning the history of our region, and we used an educational guide called The Land You Live On, considering questions such as, what are indigenous lands? And how can we understand the different maps that we found? We learned about treaties that had been made between some First Nations and the government of the expanding United States, under what conditions, and that many were not honored. We also discovered that the names of some First Nations with which we were familiar were not the names that the people in those nations used themselves. We shared an early draft of the land acknowledgement I read a moment ago with tribal leaders in Wisconsin, revising it to honor the past while recognizing the American Indian community that is still part of our own.
This is Jeopardy! And now here is your host, Dave Cicero.
Thank you. It is so good to be here this morning for this special edition of Jeopardy! Antiracism Transformation. Let me introduce today's contestants. From Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, a mother of 4, grandmother of 5, and recent attendee of the Widening the Circle of Concern discussion group, Jeannie Jarecki.
Hi. Hey, Dave. Yes, my family, this is the center of my world. However, it was worth the time on Saturday morning to get up early and attend the Widening the Circle discussion group. I hope what I've learned has left me with some good answers. Good questions.
Yes, very important to keep asking those. Best of luck to you. Next, please welcome a Philadelphia native and member of the Antiracism Transformation team here at UUCW, Beth Zaretsky. Beth, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, Dave. Yes, I am from Philly originally, and my parents have been fighting for civil rights their entire lives. My 3 wonderful daughters and I have continued to be active in protest and community learning and support. I think I got this.
Yeah, you seem very confident. good luck to you as well. And our returning champion, former chair of UUCW's Social Action Council, Ann Heitkamp.
Hi, Dave. It's been my honor to chair Social Action for 8 years. However, I'm taking a step away from that leadership, but I will remain active in our social justice work.
That's great to hear. And I look forward to working closely with the council's next set of leaders. Now, let's get started. Today's categories, and please remember that correct responses today will be posed in the form of a question. Today's categories are
Partners and teams. Resources. Terminology. UU principles. Arts and culture.
And here's our board. Ann, as our returning champion, you will start us off by choosing a category and amount.
Thanks, Dave. Let's start with partners and teams for 200. Whoops. For 100.
Okay, 100. Here we go, our first clue. Sorry.
What happened? Oh, here we go.
A coalition of diverse faith communities in Waukesha County dedicated to building and deepening relationships within and among our communities. Ann, yes, you sure buzzed in quickly.
What is SOPHIA?
That is correct. And for audience members who might not know, UU Church West is a member of SOPHIA. More on this later. Ann, back to you.
Now I'll take partners and teams for 200.
Founded in 1988, this multiracial interfaith organization of 39 Milwaukee area congregations from many religious traditions empowers people to act together in the pursuit of justice. Yes, Ann.
What is MICAH?
Correct again. UUCW is also a member of this partner organization. Ann, you're on a roll. Where to next?
Okay, let's stick with partners and teams for 300.
The group charged with learning about the racial dynamics of power systems and structures within UUCW. Yes, Beth.
What is the Antiracism Transformation team?
That is correct. So Beth, you and Jeannie are both members of the team, are you not?
We are. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And you now control the board.
Oh, all right. Dave, let's try a new category. How about terminology for 100?
People of diverse racial, ethnic, educational, class, gender, ability, sexual orientation, backgrounds, and identities all come together in an interdependent relationship of love, mutual respect, and care, seeking justice within the community and the world. Yes, Beth.
Yes. What is beloved community?
Right again. Might I ask where you learned that?
Oh, sure, Dave. When our congregation was voting to pass the 8th principle, I decided I needed to learn more about it. So I went to www.8thprincipleuu.org to learn more. There's even a Facebook page that I follow. It's 8th Principle UU Learning Community.
Wow, thanks for letting us know. That's great information.
You're welcome.
Yes. Beth, where to next?
Let's stay with terminology for 200.
The belief that the white race is better than and should therefore dominate all others. Yes, Beth.
What is racism?
I'm afraid that's not correct. Jeannie or Ann? Yes, Jeannie.
What is white fragility?
No. Ann?
What is white privilege?
No. You two of you almost had it. However, the correct response is, what is white supremacy? And it should be noted that white supremacy culture refers to a related idea that will be addressed a bit later today. So Beth, that means you are still in control.
Okay, Let's go back and finish partners and teams for 400.
The group expanding the power and capacity of Black Unitarian Universalists within the faith, providing support, information, and resources for Black UUs, and promoting justice-making and liberation. Yes, Beth.
What is Black Lives Matter?
I'm afraid that's not it. Jeannie or Ann? Jeannie.
What is BLUU?
And how are you spelling that?
BLUE?
I'm sorry, that's not the correct answer. Yes, Ann.
What is BLUU? Spelled BLUU. Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism.
Yes, indeed. Ann, our champion, is in control of the board again.
Well, let's go back to terminology for 300.
An acronym used to refer to persons identifying as non-white. Jeannie.
What is BIPOC?
No, I'm sorry. Ann.
What is POC?
Yes. Oh, wait just a minute. Our judges are weighing in on this. Oh, our judges have reversed their decision and noted that while considered inadequate, politically aligned groups of people of color are often referred to as BIPOC, meaning Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and or POC, just depending on the context. Because Jeannie answered first, she will be awarded $300 and now controls the board. Welcome to the game, Jeannie.
Thanks. Well, Dave, it's glad to know my clicker actually works. How about terminology for 400?
Okay. The systematic, fair treatment of people of all races, resulting in equitable opportunities and outcomes for everyone. Yes, Jeannie.
What is anti-racism?
No, I'm sorry. Ann.
What is justice?
I'm sorry, that's only partially correct. Beth, would you like to give it a try?
I'll give it a shot.
Beep,
What is
beep,
racial justice?
Okay. Oh, we're just about out of time. But yes, racial justice or racial equity is correct. And that signal we heard means that our time is up. But now we will go to Final Jeopardy. Contestants, please write on your card how much you're willing to wager on the clue about action and next steps.
Special thanks to all our partners in social justice and anti-racism work. Later, please stop by the community room where questions, answers, and more questions will continue.
And now to our Final Jeopardy clue. People needing to decenter whiteness and other dominant cultures in Unitarian Universalism.
Do 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 do.
Okay, pens down, please. Jeannie, we start with you. What was your response? Who is everyone? That is correct. And how much did you wager?
I wagered the future of my grandchildren.
A very valuable wager indeed. Now to Beth, your response. Who is everyone? Also correct. And what did you wager?
I wagered the future of our congregation.
Yeah.
Also so vital and important. Thank you. And finally, Ann, your response? Who is everyone? 3 correct responses. Ann, what did you wager?
I wagered the future of our world.
Wow. It appears we are all winners today. Now, although we had fun here, the wagers our contestants made need to be taken seriously. No matter where you are on your spiritual path, know that this was just the tip of the iceberg regarding the subject. We invite people of all ages to learn more about how to work toward the goal of achieving racial equity. And now, members of the elementary, RE class will leave for their classroom while we sing. As you go, may joy surround you. As you go, go in peace. Only I'm singing. Well, our love is with you always. As you go, as you go.
Good morning. My name is Karen Zimmerman, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm going to read an excerpt from The Joy in the Spiritual Work of Antiracism by Mary Byron. She's a white member of the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, and this reading is from Widening the Circle. She writes, "My UU faith has been an important part of my spiritual journey of my life. I believe in our principles and our way of expressing them publicly, advocating for the world of justice, equity, and compassion we know is possible. And we know this world is not yet here, which calls us into doing the work that is needed to create it. This is one part of why I do anti-racism work. It may be a simple statement to say, my faith calls me into action, but it is sometimes not easy to live. As a white person, I have needed to do a lot of deep spiritual work on myself. Unlearning the ideas of supremacy that I have absorbed from our culture is so much harder than learning about injustice. Yet I know we won't move away from our comfort in white supremacy until we unlearn and dismantle it in our lives." Arundhati Roy said, "The trouble is once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes a political act as much as speaking out. There's no innocence. Either way, you're accountable." When I moved past claiming my innocence in building these systems and denying their racist intent to really see how they operate, I couldn't unsee their injustice. It is the news every day, everywhere. Keeping quiet, doing nothing, isn't an option for me in a faith that claims that we respect the inherent worth and dignity of all people. There is no dignity in economic, housing, justice, immigration, environmental, and education systems that create such inequitable outcomes. White people built these, and white people are required to dismantle them to completely transform them. I knew I couldn't do this transformation work unless I was willing to get uncomfortable, to start by acknowledging my role in our systems and the ways I participate in upholding our dominant white culture. Whether it's conflict avoidance, assuming good intentions are enough, denial, tokenism, white savior behavior, that it is hard to see these things in myself, but I need to see them and change them in order to live into the principles I believe. This is part of my spiritual practice. I practice humility and forgiveness for myself and my community as a spiritual work when we engage in dismantling white supremacist systems. I recognize I'm going to make mistakes, and I also know how I will acknowledge them and try to repair the harms. I try not to let the fear stop me and to stay curious about when and where my discomfort arises. Every time I make a new discovery about my thinking that releases limiting thoughts and behavior, I feel more free, and that is also spiritual work. I also do this work because I find such joy in the community of people engaged here. Working with people of imagination and with a willingness to come together to build a more just and generous faith community is life-affirming. Learning from the variety of lived experiences and perspectives of people in different communities and congregations enlarges my dreams of what is possible and grounds them in what is necessary. Lastly, I do this work because I'm so curious about what we might yet build together. Reverend Dr. Natalie Fenimore speaks of dreaming of a Unitarian Universalism that does not yet exist. None of us know what transforming our congregations into truly multicultural expressions of our faith will be. I relish the opportunity to create something new, and this is what keeps me in this work with you.
Mary Byron shares how she sees confronting characteristics of white supremacy in herself as spiritual work, essential to living out her UU faith. While acknowledging the work is uncomfortable, she also finds growth, joy, and hope in doing this work with her UU colleagues. On the back of your order of service, you have a graphic on the work of Teme Okund and Kenneth Jones that lists some of the characteristics of white supremacy culture that serve to keep whites politically, economically, and socially dominant by defining who and what is valued in our society and who and what isn't. You can take this sheet home and use their website to explore this subject much more deeply. But the bottom line is that white supremacy culture harms not only blacks and other marginalized groups, but also each one of us with its rigid expectation and norms about who belongs and who doesn't. Some of us has been deeply wounded because we did not conform to the standards of this culture. Many of us have had to rebel against one or more of these characteristics to become our true selves. So let us reflect now on how these characteristics affect you. Sit quietly with the diagram in front of you. Take a few deep breaths. Relax your body and mind. If that is difficult because you fear doing this, stay with that feeling. Acknowledge it. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? That is your starting place. Otherwise, scan over the list of characteristics. Think about which ones have most affected you, constrained or limited your life. What messages did you receive about roles and behavior needed to be considered good, worthy, acceptable in this society? Who were you taught to fear? Where did these messages come from? Parents, teachers, spiritual leaders, bosses, peers, TV? What happened if you didn't want or couldn't conform to a social expectation for you? Was that accepted or were you discouraged? What was the impact? What if you made a mistake? Were you praised for trying or criticized for failing? As we proceed in our anti-racism transformation work, we will come back time and again to asking how these characteristics keep our congregation limited in mind and spirit from becoming more equitable and inclusive. So now look again at the diagram. The arrow shows transformation as a process. There is no magic formula or set answer. We will grow and change as a child does, by learning, taking risks, making mistakes, trying again, mostly slowly and incrementally, but sometimes with leaps. We wake, but always reaching a new stage and then realizing that it was just a step, not the end.
This next song is one that I really wish we could all sing together. It's called Wo Ya Ya, written by Solomon Amarifio, who was the percussionist in a pop group from the early 70s made up of members from Ghana and countries from the Caribbean. I'd like to invite you to be my percussionists as I sing this song. So either snapping or tapping your leg, something that makes a little bit of noise. Simple little pattern. Here's how it goes. Good. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa ya ya, 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 whoa ya ya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Whoa ya ya, whoa ya ya, whoa ya ya, whoa ya ya, whoa ya 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 ya, whoa ya ya ya, whoa ya ya ya, whoa ya ya ya.
UUCW's Antiracism Transformation Team, ART for short, appointed by the Board of Trustees last year after we passed 2 resolutions, one to support the proposed 8th principle that we read at the chalice lighting, and one specific to dismantling white supremacy culture at UUCW. While this may seem scary because we're looking at changing ourselves and our beloved UUCW, I believe we are capable of the task. Why? Because in the 6 years since we passed our resolution to publicly support the Black Lives Matter movement, we've been on a journey similar to Mary Byron's. We did this with a lot of listening, reflection, uncomfortable conversations, and risked new experience. Our attitudes about racial justice gradually shifted. We woke from seeing our racial justice work in the larger community was about being good, that is not racist, white people, helping black people. To a point we now understand we are all embedded in a white supremacy culture. And so to build that world of peace, equity, and justice and belonging, we need to change ourselves and our own institutions while we continue our work in the large and committed community, and that's important. It's both and, not either or. This shift in attitude has been personal for each of us. Shortly, Helen and Jeannie of the art team will reflect on theirs. And the process we have used to come this far, the one shown in the order of service diagram, will be the same one that will take us forward. So we do know how to do this. But there is a critical component of our change process that the diagram doesn't show: partners. As a congregation of mostly white, middle-class people, largely isolated from the direct harms of racism, we can't do this work alone. Our partners help us see through the white supremacy culture waters we swim in by doing two things: connecting us with people of color to listen to their experiences and hear the changes they feel needed to be fully seen and heard, and by challenging us when we slip back into those waters, as we inevitably will. Most importantly, our partners hold us accountable to actually make the changes, not just talk about it. I'll highlight two UU-related partners, and Tom and Eric will speak about our community partners, MICAH and SOPHIA. Black Lives Matter to Wisconsin UUs. This is a group of the 5 local UU congregations that came together in 2016 to coordinate our anti-racism efforts across the Milwaukee area and to jointly educate our members about racism. Its programs have continued to provide us both action and learning opportunity. It's brought in Black local activists to share how racism affects their communities, gathered us at demonstrations to protest for change, introduced concepts like white privilege, microaggressions, white fragility, taught us skills to speak up when we encounter racial incidents or comments, exposed us to the hidden history of segregation we were never taught, took us on a deep dive into the white supremacy culture and to explore how it operates in ourselves and our UU churches, and recently held workshops on the complex topic of reparations. Many of us attended these workshops. They helped us wake up. How did they influence your thinking? The second organization is Black Lives of UU, or BLUU. Since its founding in 2017 to both support UUs of color and amplify their voices in the denomination, BLUU has helped UUs across the country see that white supremacy culture does indeed undergird our faith and its structures. From BLUU members, we've learned both about the mistakes and the possibilities of our faith. They delved into UU history and challenged us to acknowledge that UUs not only have a history of supporting abolition and civil rights, which we love to bring up, but also a long buried history of active support for slavery and racism, which we'd like to deny. Their protest of discriminatory hiring practices at the UUA led to an ongoing process of transformation of the UUA culture and structure. Our art team is using the Widening the Circle document that outlines that process. In the last few years, UUCW has already made changes to worship, music, RE, and our building to reflect a more inclusive approach. We need to do more. The art team will help us do that work more thoroughly and accountably. Please give them your open hearts, mind, and willingness to risk and change.
Thank you, Anne. So my name is Jeannie, you heard that, and my pronouns are she and her. And I was asked to share today why dismantling white supremacy is an integral part of my spiritual practice. So Kyle was our first grandson. At 4 years old, he came home from daycare crying because kids were teasing him and harassing him. They called him a cow, tore his gold chain from his neck, leaving a big red mark. And I said to my husband, a cow? Kyle's a skinny little kid. And he said, no, they were making fun of him and they heard him because his mother is white and his father is black. Sasami came next, and while out and about, I became keenly aware of how we were perceived by others. East of Highway 100, people frequently commented on how beautiful she was. However, west of Highway 100, often people stared, gave me stern looks, and never once did I hear that my white, black, and Native American granddaughter was beautiful. Jaron is the brother of Sami, and he came third. He's 6 foot tall, and he really stood out in theater productions at Shorewood High. When To Killing a Mockingbird was canceled due to racial threats, the school hosted an assembly. Jaron was so devastated by this cancellation, he was to play the preacher, his biggest role on stage. He set out to document the assembly. However, he was even more devastated when a parent stood up and shouted, pointing at him, "Oh my God, that kid has a gun." And everyone turned around to look at Jaron, and it was more than obvious he was pointing his camera and not his gun. Jaron's parents are also black, Native American, and white. I think many of us remember the stellar reputation of St. Joe's Hospital as the baby hospital. 4 years ago, we welcomed our 4th grandbaby, Asana. My husband and I arrived excited to visit. We were met with metal detectors, given wristbands. I said we were patted down. My husband said we weren't. I think we were. We were escorted by security. I do remember that. Armed security to the maternity ward. And we were not allowed to leave this area. And I know this because I had to use the restroom. And we had to call security to even leave the restroom or even use the restroom in maternity. I had to call security. This was nothing I had ever experienced. I lived by St. Joe's. My mom had, I think one of us had St. Joe's. This isn't what I remembered. And I wondered, how did St. Joe's get like this? How did the neighborhood get like this? And by the way, Asana's mom is white, her dad is black. Eve is number 5, 5th grandchild. And I don't have any stories about Eve. She's never been harassed. Everyone comments how cute she is. She has not, and most likely will never be accused of having a gun. She was born in a safe, quiet hospital with no security guards, maybe no armed security guards. And Eve's mom and dad are both white. Because I spiritually believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, including those in Buffalo, New York, because we can't ignore that. And yet the reality is that my grandchildren and countless others are not treated equally based on their race. This is why I do this work. And this is why I chose this congregation to be my spiritual home. Because I believe it will make a difference if together we strive to journey towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions.
Good morning. My name's Helen Ambule, and my pronouns are she and her. And we forgot to mention one other member of the Antiracism Transformation team, Sue Shallig. In the early 80s, in a conversation with a Jewish friend, I told him there is no biological basis for race. His response to me was, "Don't tell a Jew there isn't a Jewish race." That stuck with me. I respected him and his sense of the world. I knew there was magnitude behind his response. I thought I was stating something affirming, but Mark's experience of the world didn't coincide with the affirmation I felt. I knew I didn't understand his perspective. Almost 4 decades later, at a family gathering, Zena said, "White people need to understand their whiteness before our country can reckon with its racism." I didn't know what she meant. What is my whiteness? I had attempted to learn the history of racism in Milwaukee and the country. I read books, attended events and workshops. In my mind, racism was out there, experienced by other races and perpetuated by racists. My narrative about myself didn't include notions of whiteness or race. Racism was out in the world, not in me. Zena's statement made me realize I had to understand my whiteness. I Googled, listened to podcasts, and read in my effort to learn. I participated with other white people in the UUA's Beloved Conversations. I read and discussed Layla Saad's book, Me and White Supremacy, with 2 of my sisters, and I participated with other women from around the country in a virtual writing circle on whiteness. The work required me to evaluate the roots of my values, my understanding of history, and my place in the world. The concept of whiteness was designed to maintain wealth and power throughout history. I take advantage of privileges without acknowledging them. I blend into white culture and assume it works for everyone. Understanding our white culture and dismantling it will be a lifelong quest. I invite each white person to do this work. White people have the ability to turn away, to choose comfort rather than change. In an On Being podcast with Krista Tippett, Robin DiAngelo spoke about the seductive force of comfort for white people. Resmaa Menakem replied that comfort is not without a cost. He continued to say, white people are willing for other people to pay the cost. Those words are hard to hear. I sit with them, the words of a black man directed at me, a white woman. I listen, I hear, and accept them. I'm committed to find my way in the discomfort. I hope to transform my whiteness to become a good ancestor.
We rise, humbly hearted rise, won't be divided, rise, with spirit to guide us, rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here in hope, in prayer, we're right here in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here in hope, in prayer, we're right here and we rise, all of the children rise, elders with wisdom rise, ancestors surround us, rise, in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here in hope, in prayer, we're right here in hope, in prayer, we find ourselves here in hope,
Good morning. My name is Tom Moore, pronouns he and him, and I am a recovering academic. So when I was asked to talk about my experience working with MICAH's Prison Reform Task Force, I tried to think of several slides or graphs that would illustrate why I think congregations such as ours needs to be involved in this work. Is it possible to show those slides? All right, for those of you unfamiliar with these sorts of things, these are line graphs. They show the imprisonment rate in Wisconsin, our sister state of Minnesota, with which we are remarkably similar in demographics and culture, and the overall state average. Now, if you go back to the late 1970s, you'll see that Wisconsin had an imprisonment rate considerably below that of the national average. You'll see that today it exceeds the national average. In contrast, Minnesota has maintained an imprisonment rate of approximately half the national average or less. Could you show the next slide? These are the same graphs broken down by race, non-Hispanic whites and non-Hispanic blacks. Down at the bottom are the imprisonment rates of whites. It's hard to make it out, but the imprisonment rates among whites have approximately doubled in Wisconsin. They've risen everywhere, but because of the difference in scale, it's hard to appreciate that because the imprisonment rates among non-Hispanic blacks are so much greater. Now, again, you'll notice that Wisconsin had an black imprisonment rate that was not terribly higher than that of the others, but it rises very dramatically, as the overall rate did, even more so. And today is more than half, or more than double, the national average, and about 3 times that of what we see in Minnesota. In fact, Wisconsin imprisons a higher percentage of its black residents than any state in the country. We don't have the highest overall imprisonment rate, but we do imprison a higher percentage of black residents. Now, given this graph, you would assume there must have been an explosion of crime in Wisconsin back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Could you show the final? Well, that's an awful lot of numbers, but if we just look at the violent crime rates, you'll notice that Wisconsin and Minnesota were considerably below the U.S. average, and Wisconsin was lower than Minnesota. Throughout this entire period, Wisconsin has a lower violent crime rate than our sister state of Minnesota. It's only in the last decade that we've started to exceed that rate. Now, cause and effect are hard to establish on the basis of line graphs, but I do think we can reach a conclusion from this. Imprisoning people is not making us safer. We cannot imprison our way to public safety. If we could, Wisconsin's crime rates would be much lower than those of Minnesota. If we want to have a safer, better society, we're going to have to find ways to bring people back into community. If we want to build that beloved community that Dr. King speaks about, we've got to extend that effort to people involved in the criminal justice system. I don't know of any organization that's doing more in that regard than MICAH and the other Wisdom affiliates. If any of you want to relive your youth a little and join us on Tuesday noon, we are currently having a demonstration and prayer vigil every week outside the Cheney Center at 30th and Teutonia. And I'd encourage you to come. I do warn you, you'll have to pray at the end. For those of you who are perhaps not inclined to take that step, but would like to become more involved, please talk to me at the end of the service. I'll be glad to tell you there are ways lots of things you can do. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eric Hoagland. My pronouns are he and his, and I'm decidedly not an academic. And I have to say that SOPHIA also does not have a video or the nice multimedia graphics, so you're stuck with me today. I'm here to speak briefly about my involvement with SOPHIA as UUCW's representative to their board. I knew almost nothing about SOPHIA when I was asked to be UUCW's representative 3 years ago. SOPHIA is part of a national interfaith organization known as the Gamaliel National Network. Gamaliel was a rabbi in the first century, so a lot of the names of the organizations are biblical, and so they have the biblical names. Under that organization, there are 17 state organizations. Wisconsin is known as Wisdom. Under Wisdom, there are 13 county organizations, and MICAH and SOPHIA are members. SOPHIA itself, the Waukesha County organization, consists of 11 progressive Christian organizations or congregations, as well as 3 UU congregations, UUCW and these 2 others in Waukesha County. SOPHIA volunteers from the member organizations and other individual members work on 5 active task forces that address key social justice issues such as prison reform. As we heard about MICAH, we're involved with MICAH's work as well. We partner with them on that. Immigration assistance and racial equity. What has truly impressed me about SOPHIA is the breadth of its work. It's got just a number of things going on simultaneously. The commitment of its volunteers. We have members from all of the member congregations and other ad hoc members as well, and they're very active on the board. And there's also a lot of training that you get as a member of SOPHIA, from SOPHIA itself, from David Liners, who leads a number of training for MICAH and SOPHIA and other Gamaliel website as well. So there's lots of training available for you when you come on the board. I wanted to take just a moment to talk about some of the key things that SOPHIA has worked on in the last couple of weeks or months or years, I should say. A delegation from SOPHIA met with the Waukesha County Sheriff to convey our disgust over the sheriff's hiring of Officer Mensah, who had resigned under pressure as a police officer. As you may recall, Officer Mensah shot and killed 3 men of color between 2015 and 2020 as a police officer with the Wauwatosa Police Department. So a group of us went over and met with the sheriff. Didn't change his mind, but we made our point. SOPHIA has been countering verbal attacks on local school boards from people resisting COVID protections, as well as resisting efforts of schools to teach truthful and accurate history of the United States. You've all heard the board, the issues that have come up in front of the boards, school boards these last few years. We've been actively countering some of the uninformed positions, as I'll put it. Most recently, and I think this is really relevant to today, SOPHIA board has begun examining the SOPHIA organization itself with the hopes of identifying and ending structural racism embedded in the organization's policies, procedures, and practices. This is very uncomfortable work, it's very difficult work, and we're just getting started. But I think it's really important work that we continue to see through and continue to work on for the foreseeable future to make SOPHIA really a relevant organization for all citizens of Waukesha County and to make everyone in the county feel welcome to participate on our board of directors. I have been on boards before, mostly nonprofit boards, but they were strictly fundraising boards. The thing about SOPHIA is it's community activism. It's a whole different animal. And you have to roll up your sleeves and get at it, but the work is harder than simply fundraising, but it's far more rewarding. SOPHIA is determined to continue its work on all social justice issues and needs your help. We would welcome so many more people coming from UUCW to join us in the work that we're doing. Please contact me if you have any questions or would like to get involved. Also, the SOPHIA website contains a wealth of information about our efforts and links to further reading or events. It is at www.sophiawaukesha.org. Thank you very much.
Split the Plate is one of UUCW's programs of outreach and generosity. Each month we give half of all undesignated offering monies to a nonprofit organization as a way to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values and serve our community. For May, our Split the Plate partner is Pathfinders. Pathfinders helps homeless and housing insecure youth find safe housing. They offer support to youth as they work towards stability, mental well-being, education, employment, and other personal goals. Their mission has a particular emphasis on serving LGBTQ-identified youth, youth with disabilities or mental health challenges, and youth aging out of foster care. In a moment, you will see a video that shows how Pathfinders empowers these young adults to change their lives. To support Pathfinders and UUCW, you can donate via text, mail, or UUCW's website using the information found below.
Pathfinders is just a safe space for me. If I'm not safe at home, I'll just sleep here.
I get a lot of emotional support.
A lot of doors have opened for me since I came to Pathfinders.
At Pathfinders, we serve our community's most vulnerable and traumatized young people, and our broad continuum of services are tailored specifically to meet their unique and challenging needs. I think the way we empower youth here at Pathfinders is unique in our community. Most other organizations, other adults in young people's lives, can often be very quick to try to make the decisions for young people and then not really understand why those decisions don't work and why young people sometimes fail. And in our approach, we really are there to support young people throughout the decisions that they make and the consequences of those decisions.
Instead of scolding, it's like life lessons. They're really nurturing.
I've seen youth literally come in with their heads down and then leave with their heads up, held high, because they know that they have a higher purpose, and now they have goals they want to reach and get there, and Pathfinders have the resources for the youth to get there.
It's just like having this second family and able to be myself is what I always wanted.
Part of our job is what is often found in most intact families and healthy families, and that is caring adults who help young people to figure out what are the benefits, what are the negative consequences of the decisions that they could make. But at the end of the day, youth have to make the decisions and own them. And we are there to allow them to make mistakes because, frankly, that's what all young people need to do in order to grow and thrive.
Success for our youth looks like growth. Just making sure that they're better than they were before.
It's a good place. I recommend it for anybody, and I'm going to tell you that you should go.
You won't feel down, they'll make you laugh, they'll make you feel like you're just at home, like how they made me feel.
Thank you for your support of Pathfinders and UUCW. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Our closing words today were adapted from a piece by D. Scott Cooper entitled, "This is Our Calling." The world aches for us to join together to oppose racism and bring about healing, toil for justice, and produce ever-increasing love. This is our calling. Go forth and act accordingly. Amen. Blessed be.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and compassion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.